Hey everyone, welcome to another deck tech brought to you by MTG Deck Techs. My name is Jason and today we're going to take a look at a deck that features a card from the new Guilds of Ravnica set. Now Guilds of Ravnica won't be legal until October 5th when the set is released, but after preview season, I was floored by the card that was previewed by the Mana Leak, Runaway Steam Kin. Runaway Steam Kin is a 1/1 elemental that costs 1 and a red, and it reads, whenever you cast a red spell, if Runaway Steam Kin has fewer than 3 +1/+1 counters on it, put a +1/+1 counter on Runaway Steam Kin. You can remove 3 +1/+1 counters from Runaway Steam Kin to add red, red, red. Now I don't know about you, but in the modern format that looks a lot like a ritual card. And every card that we cast in this deck is going to put a counter on Runaway Steam Kin. So with that in mind, I present to you Mono Red Steam Kin Storm. So to start this off, we're going to take a look at two creatures. The first one is Runaway Steam Kin, which we just covered. So the plan here is we're going to be casting a lot of red spells to produce a lot of mana with Runaway Steam Kin. Moving on, we have Monastery Swiftspear, a 1/2 for 1 mana with haste and prowess. We have quite a few non-creature spells in the deck, so why not take advantage of this early and possibly devastating damage from the Monastery Swiftspear. So in order to feed the engine of the deck, we're going to need to have some cheap spells and card draw. Looking at card draw, we have 3 different cards that help us cycle through our deck. The first card is Street Wraith. We will never cast this card, but we can use its ability to pay 2 life and cycle it to draw a card. Street Wraith effectively cuts our 60 card deck into a 56 card deck. Next on the list we have Faithless Looting. Faithless Looting is a staple in a lot of fast and graveyard based decks, and there's a good reason for that. For 1 mana you get to draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. This card is by far the most efficient card draw spell in red, and will help us dig deeper to find more action. It also has the added benefit of being able to flash back for 3 mana, so we can cast a spell again. The last card draw spell we have in the deck is Manamorphose. Manamorphose is effectively a free spell because upon resolution, you get to add 2 mana of any color to your mana pool and draw a card. With 12 total spells that allow us to cycle through our deck and 4 that allow us to do it again, I don't think we'll have much of an issue going through our deck and finding the action that we need. Now that we've gotten through the card draw, let's take a look at the cheap spells I was mentioning earlier. These 3 spells are free, or they at least replace themselves upon resolution. The first card here is Grapeshot. We can either pay a red or 2 life to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. Very rarely are we going to pay red for the mana cost. Usually we're going to pay 2 to ping our opponent for 1 to put a counter on the Runaway Steam Kin. Also, being able to do incremental damage to our opponent will add up later in the game. The next free card that we have here is Pact of the Titan. For a casting cost of 0, we get to put a 4/4 red giant creature token onto the battlefield. At the beginning of your next upkeep, however, you have to pay 4 and a red. If you don't, you lose the game. We're not going to ever be able to pay that, so you better win on the turn you cast this card. The more of these free spells we can find, the better, because that means we have more 4/4 giants and more counters on the Runaway Steam Kin to take off to produce mana to cast spells that we actually need to pay for. This last card replaces the mana that was spent on it to cast it. Burning Tree Emissary is a 2/2 for 2 hybrid red-green mana that whenever it enters the battlefield you get a red and a green mana added back into your mana pool. Burning Tree Emissary is very similar to Manamorphose, except we don't get to draw a card with it. But it does replace the mana used for it so that we can cast other spells as well. Now that we've gone through the cards that are going to draw through our deck and help us add mana to the mana pool and build up a board state, let's take a look at the payoffs that will actually win us the games. We're going to take out a page of Modern 8 Whack with these first 2 cards. We have Goblin Bushwhacker and Reckless Bushwhacker. For 2 mana for its mana cost and its kicker, Goblin Bushwhacker comes in and gives all creatures you control +1/+0 and haste until end of turn. With Reckless Bushwhacker, you can pay its surge cost to cast it if you cast another spell this turn to do the exact same thing as Goblin Bushwhacker. The small pump and the haste from the Bushwhackers will give our giants, our Burning Tree Emissaries, even our Runaway Steam Kin haste to attack the turn that they're cast. Most of the time we're going to be winning with combat damage through the use of the Bushwhackers. If we don't win by combat damage, however, we have 2 Grapeshots in the deck. Like in traditional Storm, we're going to be casting a lot of spells in a single turn. Then we can use the Grapeshot to deal lethal damage to our opponent. Now that the bulk of the deck has been discussed, let's take a look at the mana base. So for our mana base, we have 4 Simian Spirit Guides. Yes, I know it's a creature, but we're rarely going to be casting it. Usually we're going to be exiling it to add red to our mana pool. This can enable some broken things in Modern, like being able to go off a complete turn earlier than we usually could. Rounding out our mana base, we have 14 Mountains. We're basically going to be capping out at 2 mana, so having a low land count allows us to have more action in the deck. Now that the main deck has been covered, let's move on to the sideboard. Because this is a combo deck, we don't want to over sideboard and dilute the combo. So the sideboard is made up of cards that can combat strategies that are going to give us a hard time or outpace us. Starting off, we have 4 Ley Line of Sanctities. The biggest problem I can think of with this deck is facing a deck that is turn 1 discard. Being able to strip us of our early card draw could be devastating for our strategy. The best way to combat this is to give ourselves hexproof at the beginning of the game with Ley Line of Sanctity. We also have another Ley Line in the list, Ley Line of the Void. This Ley Line is going to come in against the popular graveyard-based decks in the format. Just like Ley Line of Sanctity, we're going to hope that it's in our opening hand to put it in the game before the game starts. We also have 2 copies of Pact of Negation in the sideboard. As all in as we are, why not have Pact of Negation? We can use this against the more interactive decks and the control decks that might be able to disrupt us or counter what we're doing. Moving on, we have 2 copies of Alpine Moon. I kind of wanted to throw Blood Moon in here, but it's kind of too expensive. Alpine Moon is going to be our cheap counter to the big mana decks such as Tron. Finally, in the sideboard, we have 3 copies of Shattering Spree. Shattering Spree is a cheap spell that we can replicate if we have the mana for it that can combat some of the artifact decks in the format. Just like in the main deck, we want to have our sideboard cards have low mana cost because of our low land count. With the right opening hand and the right draws, this deck can possibly kill on turn 1. The winning combination of cards would be a Mountain, a Simian Spirit Guide, a Runaway Steam Kin, 2 free spells, either Gutshot or Pact of the Titan, and then a Faithless Looting. You can play the Mountain, exile a Simian Spirit Guide, play the Runaway Steam Kin, cast your 2 free spells, cast Looting. You have 3 mana from Steam Kin, you can cast whatever else is in your hand, and you might be able to go off that way. I'm not saying it's super likely, but there's a chance. Turn 2 or turn 3 wins are going to be more common though. But anyway, that's Mono Red Steam Kin Storm. I'm not saying this is going to take down a GP, but you can take this to an F&M and have fun with it, throw your friends off guard. You may even be able to run the table with it. Who knows? So what do you think? Could this possibly be more than an F&M deck? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all next time. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. It helps out a lot. Also, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with all of our uploads. You can follow us on these platforms here at MTGGRN. And finally, a big shout out to Terry Ledford for his generous Patreon donation. If you would like to become a patron for MTGGRN, please click the link down below. It is not necessary, but it helps us out quite a bit. Thank you for watching the video, and we will see you all again soon.